Okay, we've made it to the last chapter, chapter 5. This one will be short. I don't think you really need me to do a whole lot with conceptualization here with the American Revolution. I know that you've already learned about it. So we left off in April of 1775, where despite the fact that Britain was willing to meet the colonists halfway, before word got there, the shooting had started at Lexington and Concord. And so there was a meeting um, in Philadelphia. I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. The Second Continental Congress after in the summer after Lexington and Concord, and it's really weird because the colonies are so divided between groups that want to declare independence. You know, the John Adams, and then you also see the Lees and Galloways that want to have a much more conservative, like, let's get Britain to, again, as it was proposed, sort of meet us halfway, and allow us to have greater autonomy, particularly in terms of taxation. So the Olive Branch Petition they agreed to, which is, we are loyal subjects and we just want to have a redress of our grievances. But at the same time, they also say this is why we are forming an army. And they also named George Washington as the commander of that Continental Army. But independence is still a long ways away. One of the most influential pieces of political propaganda by a pamphlet that came out in the winter of 75, 76, Common Sense by Thomas Paine. And it's radical in that it really denounces the monarchy as a degenerative institution, but at the same time, also makes more common sense types arguments of, how can Britain so far away rule over us? How is that right, that somebody 3,000 miles away rules us? Or how can a little island rule such a big continent? So you get a chance to see that. And then when independence is finally declared, in the summer of 76, they talk about that, and you can see the impact of the Enlightenment and the Enlightened ideas that influence Jefferson and the Declaration of Independence. The Articles of Confederation is created, where there's a really weak central government. That's one of the questions where you talk about, like, what did they accomplish? Well, I mean, the war is won. They do that, but it's pretty ineffective, and it is not. I don't want to get ahead of myself. We'll see in the wake of the revolution, once the war has been won, it's not able to do a whole heck of a lot. It's really it's the limitations where, and this is all the 8th grade stuff, how it becomes basically impossible. You need such a large majority of states to vote to do anything of any significance. Plus, the articles have no coercive power, no power to tax the states at all. But there is a national government that is created to try and prosecute the war. American advantages and challenges. We have no money. We have no fleet. Unless we get foreign recognition, we're not going to win. And unless we get foreign loans and foreign supplies, we're not going to win. However, I was just doing the Vietnam War with this year's class, and it's, we won all the battles in Vietnam, but we left because the cost of the war was too high to continue this war of attrition, and that's what happens in the American Revolution. What's George Washington's career record? He wins 3 battles, he loses 6. Okay, but he never surrenders. He keeps the army around, and eventually it gets to the point where the cost of the war becomes so high, and America received assistance by powerful countries like France, that Britain no longer is willing to pursue the war and grants us our independence. The first phase of the war is in 1775 in New England, where the British army sees it as just more of a revolt. And even though they take Bunker Hill, they take such high casualties that, it's kind of like a Pyrrhic victory where they win, but they pay such a heavy cost that it not only inspires American colonists to think this war might be able to be won, But in March of 1776, British Army actually goes to Canada and leaves Boston. The second phase is the mid-Atlantic, and as your textbook said, the British should have easily won the war here. They made a lot of mistakes. They take New York City. Washington gets a token victory at Trenton. Philadelphia is surrendered to the British, but Howe doesn't follow the strategy he laid out, and Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne loses in Saratoga in October of 1777, and that's enough of a victory that France decides that they're going to back us. They're going to back us with money. They're going to back us with ships. They're going to back us with men, and that becomes a really important ally in the war. So now, for the last part of the war, the last 3 years, the war goes to the South. And, we don't want to learn history through movies, but in the movie The Patriot, while it's fiction, it really captures the nastiness, the partisan war that is fought in the South. Yes, there are large battlefields, but it is also a very irregular war in the South, as you'll see, pitting, American against American, Patriot versus Loyalist or Tory. And the British went down there because they figured that's where there was the greatest Loyalist support, and they could defeat the army there. They take Charlestown. They win the battle at Camden. The Patriots and the Continental Army are part of the Continental Army are able to win at Kings Mountain. That's irregular fighting. The battle at Guilford Courthouse, and the decision is made to tell Cornwallis to get out of the Carolinas and to take up a defensive position on the Yorktown Peninsula, where he's trapped by Washington with the aid of the French Navy, and surrenders in 1781. The Treaty of Paris in 1783 gives us everything to the Mississippi River. The final thing that this chapter goes through is the impact on war on society. And there's a lot here. It talks about what happened to loyalists who lost everything as a result of their support of the British during the Revolution. And then this is like one of your questions that you may choose to answer, so I'm not going to answer it here for you. But it's kind of cool in that, like, the opening part of your textbook reading talks about, like, all right, there's one word that is the rhetoric of the American Revolution, and that is liberty, right? As we've talked about so many times. Liberty, the positive definition, my ability to participate in government. I can vote, or I can indirectly vote for somebody. I know the person that is representing me. I can talk to the person that is representing me. I can petition the person that is representing me. And then the negative definition of liberty, the idea that there are individual rights that the government can't take away from me. And, like, okay, there's all of that rhetoric, but none of that is extended to slaves, Indians, or women. And so it kind of talks about the impact on slavery, and how Americans sort of justified the continuance of the existence of slavery with the rhetoric of the Revolution and the patriarchal society that still prevailed in the aftermath of the Revolution, and also the impact on Indians. And we're going to really develop that once we come together in a course, but you will see what happened to Indians as the United States government was created. It also talks about government, states all right constitutions. That's pretty cool. The Massachusetts Constitution is the oldest existing constitution in the world. And it talks about the setup of state government. And then it also talks about, the national government and what the Articles of Confederation couldn't do, which was basically repair the country that was devastated by the war. I mean, debt is a major problem in its inability to tax, but it does talk about, not only was there the success in being able to prosecute the war, but also the provided for the orderly settlement of the West. And it talks about the various ordinances culminating with the Northwest Ordinance. And then finally, you really see what a mess the country is after the American Revolution with Shays' Rebellion, which is a rebellion by a group of debtors in Massachusetts. It is really a catalyst for the calling of the Constitutional Convention. But when we come back, I will actually teach you that in person. Okay? Awesome, guys. Last chapter.